Hey everyone, Jonathan Bailor back, and I am so excited about today's session. In fact, you may have to turn your speakers down a little bit because I think it's going to get a little bit rowdy in here because we have a wonderful person with us, someone who really is cut from the same cloth because she gets fired up about this subject being more than just about calories in, calories out, saying that 2/3 of our population are just lazy gluttons and we just need to try harder. In fact, she's made a career out of exposing the mythology we see around these skinny jeans and six-pack abs and 100-calorie snack packs. She's done that all around the world for many, many generations. She spent a bunch of time at the Huffington Post. She founded her own fabulous magazine called Experience Life. And this isn't just like some cottage industry. This has reached over 3 million individuals and has received over 100 editorial design awards in its more than a decade-long history. She is an absolute baller. And she wrote this fabulous manifesto, which really explodes these myths that we're here to dispel. And you can learn more about her as well as this revolutionary act. She is in the process of performing and helping us all to perform at her site, revolutionaryacts.com. Pilar, Gerasimo, welcome.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. What a delightful introduction. Thank you. It's great to be here with you.
Well, I am so happy to have you, Pilar. We met just a few weeks ago and we became fast friends because I feel like our souls are on the same path. And I want to get started before we jump into your manifesto here really quick. You are unapologetically blowing the roof off a lot of this 1950s just eat less and exercise more people. Come on, that's all there is to it. What motivates you to go so passionately against the current?
I think it's a combination, Jonathan, of my own frustration with having tried to do it the way that the so-called authoritative sources told me I had to do it. And by that I mean my medical professionals, my health care guides, people like nutritionists who are giving out conventional information, and then the media, who I think were so confusing to me in my early journey toward a healthier way of life. It just, I about blew my own top, and I really wasn't super unhealthy to begin with, but the more I followed the conventional road, the further off course I got. And then I think as I really became a health journalist as I started the magazine Experience Life. And like I said, that came out of my own frustration. But when I got into the media and I started understanding the dynamics by which we are misled, sometimes intentionally, sometimes just because that's the way media works, it made me even more frustrated and more determined to help other people turn it around without so many detours and delays. Because one thing I see over and over again is that as people begin to embrace what they think are healthier choices, but those aren't necessarily choices that are working, like they're counting calories and they're cutting down on fats, for example. And instead of getting better, they get worse or stay the same, and then they give up, or they feel like they've failed. And that just to me is, it's not just, it's not fair. I see the frustration and the pain on those people's faces, and I've felt that myself. So that's what's motivated me. And it's been, as you were saying, for me, it's been about 13 years of doing this type of work, and it's the most gratifying work on the planet right now. Because ultimately, I believe, like you do, it's like we need more healthy, happy people out in the world doing their thing and giving their best gifts. And we can't afford not just us personally to be unhealthy, but to have people in our midst unhealthy, unhappy, demotivated, frustrated, angry. I don't want to live in that kind of world. I want to live in a world with like more of us running around.
and it's you really, I think you hit the nail on the head, Pilar, when you said it's not a lack of effort. Certainly, like I get so frustrated because certainly maybe there's maybe a 0.5% of the population that's just completely off the ranch, like doing the stereotypical things that make people diabetic and obese. But that is the minority, the shocking minority. It's so many people have tried so many things. It's not a lack of effort. It appears to be a lack of, or simply just incorrect information. What do you think about that?
I think it is a combination of incorrect information and a sort of anxiety on the part of people who are starting out about trying to trying it their own way, experimenting. I think the discouragement that comes early often leads people to feel disempowered. And then the more that they reach out and get this bad information, the worse it gets. I do think that there's also an inertia that happens. Once you're unhealthy and you're malnourished, you're overweight, you're probably getting depressed, not just by your circumstances, but by the nutrition or lack thereof that you're getting, and the lack of satisfaction you're getting from eating diet foods and low-cal foods combined with fast foods and other crappy foods. It's very difficult to get remotivated from that place to do anything. And I don't think it's that people are lazy. I think that I think they're sick. I think that they're so low on the vitality scale that imagining doing something like getting up and running, you know, or taking a fitness class or getting on their bike and riding 10 miles, it's just they can't even imagine doing that. They can barely get up the stairs in their house. You know, they can barely get off the couch, not because they're lazy. And I think that's a really important differentiation, but because they feel so crappy. Yeah. And that's the part that I think is often overlooked.
And it's so important to acknowledge that, because when you see the amount of suffering that you and I see in the world, too trivial. I mean, that's what the mainstream media, I feel, in a lot of cases does, is they trivialize it. It's just it's like going to someone who is an anorexic and saying, just eat more. What is wrong with you? Just eat more food. Well, the anorexic is not missing the point that they're not eating enough. The question is, why are they doing that? And especially, I was speaking with a wonderful researcher recently, and she was describing this very, very sad, for lack of a better term, cycle where an individual who is put in an unhealthy environment starts to gain weight and get sick and become overfat, and that causes depression, and then they go on medication for the depression, which also makes it harder for them to control their appetite, so then they get more depressed and more overweight. And again, to go to a person that is in that complicated of a web and say, what's wrong with you? Just try harder, is inhumane. Am I being too strong?
No, I mean, I think it's lacking in empathy, it's lacking in understanding, and it is fundamentally mistaken. I mean, I think one of the things that you and I have both learned from the research that we've done in digging through the studies and the literature is that, you know, our brains get hijacked. I mean, you know, Dr. Mark Hyman says that often in his books, is like your whole body gets hijacked. It's not that anybody thinks it's a good idea to sit down and eat an entire pack of donuts. It's just that once you've eaten one or two, there's stuff that happens inside your biology, inside your biochemistry, inside your neurology that makes you want a third and a fourth and a sixth. And that's how people eat a whole container of donuts. Absolutely. It's like that food is designed to make you crazy. Yeah. And I think once you've begun that path, and this is why it's like, I think sometimes detoxing yourself off of those foods is the only way to get off. It's like you have to sort of create I'm going to fix that part of my biochemistry that's broken. Otherwise, the cravings go just off the charts. And then people feel so ashamed of themselves. Yeah. It's like, I must be a horrible person that I just ate this, or that I can't stop thinking about the cookies or the cakes. And I think when we get into a judgmental place and look at folks who are feeling that, it's not only counterproductive, but it ignores the basic science behind what's causing the problem. And you're right that the vicious circle then begins of you need a drug, you know, whether it's a depression drug or a cholesterol and blood pressure drug. Now, once you're taking those drugs, you have side effects that make you less able to benefit from exercise. You know, we've seen mitochondrial dysfunction. So the very people who should be exercising and needing the benefit of that aren't getting it. And, you know, all the other side effects, muscle aches, things that, you know, lowered vitality. And lo and behold, it begins again. So I think this is the part of it that requires a revolutionary mindset, is understanding it's not just that you're a weak person, it's that you're living in an environment that is full of toxic choices, toxic information, misleading notions of what you should be doing. And sometimes the people that you trust most, namely, you know, the newspaper or the magazine that you're reading that purports to be expert on this, or your healthcare professionals, are sending you down a wrong road and telling you to eat the wrong things. And they're not telling you that really what you need to not be eating is not so much a particular number of calories or a particular number of carbs or a particular, diet. It's like getting off of the stuff that's making you nuts is really the only way to begin seeing clearly and making clear choices.
And I'm so happy you used one of our favorite words, and that's revolution and revolutionary, because what we're describing here really is, as you said, revolutionary. It's thinking of certain edible products as more like drug-like, and seeing this as a multifactorial equation that is not as dehumanizing as the current calorie myth that we're told. So let's dig into your manifesto. This has gotten so much attention, and for good reason, because you give us 10 points, and I know you have many more than 10, but I can only imagine you pulling your hair out and being like, oh my god, okay, these are the 10. So I cherish these 10 because I know how painful it must have been to whittle the list down. But let's start right from the top. And again, folks, you can check out this full top 10 list as well as the manifesto PDF at revolutionaryact.com. It is fabulous. The very first point here, the way we are living is crazy. Tell us a bit about that, Pilar.
Yeah, so that's the very first point, like you said, and I think that was where I felt like I had to start, because until, again, we understood that it's not you that's crazy and bad, it's the world around you. And Jonathan, I just want to show people, this is what the manifesto looks like in its printed form, and it's available, like you said, online as a PDF. You can print out, and it looks a lot like this, or as a little interactive thing. So number one, the way we are living is crazy. Basically, it's saying, we're living in a world where more than 50% of the people in the United States, more of the adult population, is chronically ill and or obese. You know, I think the commonly stated number is 2/3 of people are overweight or obese, 7 out of 10. So you really think about that. Now, what kind of society produces more unhealthy people than healthy people? An unhealthy society, right? And if you're living in a world where 2 out of 3 people are overweight or obese, I think that the psychology researcher Barbara Fredrickson noted that only about 20% of us mentally and emotionally are thriving at any given time, and that 80% of us are either sort of just getting by or living lives of quiet despair, she said.
Henry Thoreau, I love it.
But I think that is really crazy. Yeah. I mean, a society, the whole point of a society is to produce healthy, thriving people. And if what we're producing is people who are sick, chronically sick, and miserable, then the way we're living is just nuts. It's not right.
And it's such an important point, Pilar, because when people hear what you advocate, what I advocate, what the science actually advocates, it is shockingly contrarian. It is not what society says, but we've seen what society churns out, to your point. So doesn't it make sense that just forget all the science. Common sense tells us that if you don't want what everyone else has, don't do what everyone else does.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. If you do what's normal in this society, you will end up being our version of normal. Yeah. What the majority is doing is producing what the majority has. So right off the bat, the signal is, if you want to be different, you're going to have to do something differently. And I think that's, a lot of what you and I are both, and a lot of other great revolutionary people are now saying. And I'm so excited that we're finally getting off the just eat less and exercise more track, because we've been getting told that. And a lot of people, frankly, have been doing it. Yeah. It just isn't working.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. Well, number 2, there are powerful social and economic and political forces that are undermining our health. Talk about a revolution. There's some revolutionary thinking going on in number 2 here.
I know. I didn't hold any punches back on that one. I mean, I think last night I was screening an early cut of a movie called Fed Up, which is going to be coming out, I think, early in the next year. And we're seeing more and more of these movies and documentaries coming out that are sort of exposing how industry, for example, the food industry, big food, as we've come to call them, and big pharma, and they're really kind of a lot of the same companies, right? The drug and food companies have sort of met in the middle, that they're raking in enormous profits. And they've been gaining ground in the past probably 50 years is when most of the damage has been done, because our government has largely agreed to support those special interests rather than doing what's in the best interests of the general population, including our children, which is where the movie Fed Up is going to be focusing. But watching the film last night, I was really struck by how often the public interests have been disserved and even just thrown over by the interests of private profit. And what it means is that our policies from USDA, myplate.gov to school lunch to the recommendations that come out, in terms of nutritional guidelines and so on, that then filter down into what everybody from, school nutritionists to, our medical professionals are handing us. A lot of times when you go to the doctor, you'll get handed some little pamphlet or quick guide to health. And it walks in lockstep with the recommendations that have come out of so-called authoritative sources. But those authoritative sources have been absolutely formed in their perspectives by special interests. And those economic interests are really hard to fight. I mean, you can talk to US senators, you can talk to presidents and presidents' wives if you want to talk to, look at Michelle Obama's Let's Move campaign. That started out as really focused on some pretty smart nutritional principles, took a hard left turn somewhere along the way, and it became all about just be more active, And I mean, I know that that's not the intention of her program, and I respect her enormously, but it's clear something really got bent in their approach. And I think a lot of it had to do with food industry lobbyists. If you look at how much they spent on lobbying during the periods where we were about to come out with public policies and public guidelines that were a little bit off where they wanted them to be, they spent millions, tens of millions of dollars to get those recommendations back in line with what they wanted, which meant there's still a side serving of dairy for everybody. Several times a day, we're encouraging people to eat more grain-based foods, cereals, for example. Well, guess what? Some of the biggest food companies in the world produce, like General Mills and Cargill, and there are cereal companies. Everything that they have in their arsenal of built invested capital are machines that extrude cereals out of processed flours, soybean oil, and something else. Everything's the same mash, and it gets formed into an extruded shape, whether it's a Dorito chip or, a cereal Fruit Loop or something. There is so much money invested in that. Economically, the forces are guiding our daily choices, and we're being told that Special K cereal is a healthy choice, just like a bazillion other foods that come out of that system. So if you don't think that, and that's just food, we could go on about pharmaceuticals, and it's even worse, right? Because the recommendations are everybody needs a cholesterol drug. You eat the way we were told to eat, and you will need a cholesterol drug, or at least you'll fit the standard profile of people they'll tell you need one.
Absolutely. It's truly an enlightening approach, Pilar, because once we understand this, I think it gives us permission to do something. And tell me what you think about this. Anytime an expert, because I've had the wonderful privilege, and I know you've done the same, to talk with some really high tier experts, so-called, in this industry. And I was talking to one of the highest in one of the most well-respected dietary associations, and we got into it a little bit about grains. And not in like a you're wrong, but more just help me understand why you think what you're thinking. And I don't know, you've probably seen the movie Thank You for Smoking.
Yeah.
So it felt like a scene from that movie, because what I was really going for is, like, for example, what is the, eventually we got down to what is the unique nutritional benefit that you can only get from grains? Because to me, that's the only reason to say, like, you need to eat something, because it does something that you can't, or it does something in a superior fashion to anything else. And the answer always turned into, like, well, it's all about moderation and balance. Well, it's all about moderation. I mean, like, no, wait, stop. Science. Talk to me in science terms. Biologically, why are you recommending this? And they couldn't answer, because it seems like maybe they didn't actually research this. They're just following these guidelines and these interests that you're describing.
It's a very interesting moment, that moment you're describing, and I have run into that myself so many times, where you hit on something and you're just trying to get a straight answer. And what you're getting, and typically, Jonathan, what I find is that if I keep pushing on okay, so tell me scientifically why I ought to be eating this, eventually what I'll get to is, well, we can't feed the world on organic vegetables. I mean, yes, I guess you could get all your happy carbs from vegetables and fruits and, other whole foods, but we can't feed the world that way. People are starving, and then it becomes this socioeconomic, you're a food elitist argument. And I think it's exactly the opposite, which is the very people who would benefit most from having affordable, sustainable, supplies of vegetables and other whole foods that are full of phytonutrients as well as carbohydrates, and fiber and other things that we need, are the people who are being marketed to the most heavily to have those grain-based processed products on the shelf at eye level of their kids. And they're the ones who are the most likely to be told that, cereal is a great food alternative, really, for any meal of the day. Yeah. When in doubt, eat a so-called whole grain cereal. Yeah. Well, guess what? There's hardly any whole grains in those whole grain cereals, and they still spike your blood sugar to the moon and drop you back down into a nightmare of craving more grains and starches and sugars. And all of this. But my point is that this is the argument cycle you get into. It's like, really, just explain, what's the science again? And where's the proof of that? And we can talk about why some of that is, but I think ultimately the bigger problem is you're going to keep getting this sort of diversionary answer. And I think that's why, again, Revolutionary Act, going outside of the authoritative circles, the people who seem to supposedly know what they're talking about, and reading up from people like you and people who are kind of on the cutting edge and they're sort of progressive. But the thing interesting, I'll just mention this, is when you look at the people who are giving you this advice, I have found it's very interesting that the healthiest looking people I've interviewed are the ones who typically are a little out on the edge.
Yep.
It's not the person who's in charge, of the USDA food guidelines. It's just not. So I'm a big believer, like, do what works for you, follow people who are living in a way that's appealing to you and who you want to be like, and then you see where you go.
I love it. Well, the third point in the manifesto is very apropos, because after these first 2 points, I can imagine viewers and listeners may be thinking, oh man, well, there's really just nothing I can do. The power's out of my hands. But in point 3, you bring it back and you say the time for complicity is over, putting the responsibility back on us. Tell us what you mean there.
Well, I want to just preface this by saying that I'm often the person railing against the, hey, it's all about personal responsibility thing, because as we've talked about, our environment dictates our behavior, and our environment is being run by something other than our personal responsibility or choices. That said, we've really bought into a lot of these unhealthy notions, and we've been quick to embrace a lot of stupid quick fixes. Oh, I'll just take this pill, diet pills and powders, for example, or I love the idea that I can have these Snackwell cookies, and yay, I can still eat cookies, and we're not reading the ingredients. We're not understanding the ingredients. We're buying into these quick fix solutions in part because we love to believe them. And we're buying into the conventional sources because they're convenient for us. If someone in our doctor's office puts this guide into our hands, we can look at the guide and we can follow the guide, and then 2 months later we can go, I tried it, it didn't work, I give up. And I think there's the place where our complicity, rather than going, well, what, this crap isn't working at all, I'm going to keep looking, I'm going to try something else. And I think for me, that's where I started to feel empowered as an individual. And when I started rejecting what I was reading in the women's magazines of the day and the health and fitness magazines of the day, saying, you know what, I just tried this program. Like, I remember once, I think Shape magazine put out this, like, one of the first interactive programs, and it was very sexy back in the day to have, like, you're going to email the program of what you should eat every day. And I tried that, and I did for like 5 days. I was like, okay, 1 toaster waffle, this and some fake margarine product and some other, and I was like, ugh, and I would be incredibly hungry, and then I did the thing they told me to eat for lunch, which was probably worse. After 5 days, I was like, okay, I'm really unhappy. I have very low energy. I feel like crap, and I'm not liking myself, and I'm just like angry, Yeah. I was like, I'm not doing this anymore. Yeah. And I just started figuring it out myself. But I think we have created a culture where we are followers. It's like, just tell me what to eat. That's a very disempowered place to be. And I'm a big believer in experimenting, getting outside of a passive, receptive, just tell me what to do place, and going in search of information that makes more sense to you, and being willing to try it and seeing how you feel. Yep. And then that's where I think, I say it's like we've learned to tolerate the intolerable. And I do think that people have become so, not just complicit in the choices that they're making, but willing to settle for a lower level of vitality than they really need to. Yeah. And I think the time for that is over.
And I think it's definitely possible. I like to use the example, well, personally, I will never be able to experience this, but I'm always amazed and impressed by when a woman becomes pregnant. She is immediately able to say, I now have a responsibility to take care of this blessing and this miracle that is my body, and this blessing and this miracle that is this new life that I'm creating. But somehow in our society, in month 10, that just dissolves. And,
Yeah.
and a child that is 10 months from conception is very different from a child that's 9 months from conception. But what we can't, I use that because it's an example. We can do this. Millions, tens of hundreds of millions of people have successfully done this, bucked the system and said, I will take responsibility. Pilar, why do you think that only happens in 9-month segments?
Well, it's interesting. A lot of the science around behavior change suggests that catalysts are, like a pregnancy, or sometimes they're really nasty things like a bad lab result or a crisis or a really humiliating experience sometimes will get people to move from a place of, contemplation or pre-contemplation into a place of preparation or action. I think with pregnancy, it's sort of a unique state because there's all kinds of interesting hormonal things going on too, and neurological things of like a protectiveness about this little person that you're right, once it's out of the body, somehow it becomes like a negotiable enterprise. But I think that there are sort of daily reminders within pregnancy that are constantly catalysts of like, oh, this is another person. And not, to be frank, a lot of women don't. There are a lot of women who are pregnant who continue to do things, as we've seen, addicted women will continue to use. And a lot of women will continue to eat stuff. In fact, they'll use pregnancy as permission to kind of maltreat their bodies. And I don't know whether that's the exception or the rule. I don't have a statistic on that. It doesn't work for everybody is my point. But there are a lot of people who will have other catalysts. And I see these people too, who they just reach this point where it's enough pain for them, or they're about to have to undergo bariatric surgery, or they see someone near them suffer a heart attack or go on dialysis or have a leg amputated from diabetes or something like that. And I think that those catalysts can be really important, valuable opportunities to make change, but it doesn't have to get to that point. I don't think you necessarily have to. I think what you do need to do is connect with some internal value in yourself whereby you believe you deserve to feel better than you do, and that it's possible for you. Connecting to hope, connecting to the possibility that you could embrace a life that's bigger than the one that you have, and get into agreement with values that are really important to you intrinsically. We'll talk about the bikini body thing in a minute and why that doesn't work. Yeah. But I think that if you're going to overcome inertia and you're going to overcome the tide of unhealthy forces coming against you, it requires a very deep sense of purpose and a bigger why. And that's what pregnancy provides, although, again, not to everybody. And unfortunately, sometimes in 9-month intervals, whereas life tends to go on a bit longer than that. The other thing that I'll say, though, too, Jonathan, is I think, we didn't talk a lot about prescription drugs, but I think that that's another place that we have complicity, that we are willing to follow medical counsel sometimes that really goes against our own best interests. And we start to, sometimes I think one of the triggers that people have is when they get so fed up with taking 25 different medications a day, and they're having so many side effects that their quality of life has gotten so bad. Their libido's gone, their vitality's gone, their energy's gone, they've got leg pain, and that's just like, at some point, they're like, okay, I've been willing to do this for 5 years, but it's like, my life is hell. It's not worth living anymore. Yeah. People literally get suicidal. Yeah. And I think that can also be, not that you should get to that point again, but that sort of frog in hot water problem of like, if you're brought to a boil slowly, it's very different than being just tossed in.
Absolutely. Well, we've covered that there's major societal influences here, but we don't have to fall victim to them. And then we turn the corner here with point 4, where you say that in other words, we don't have to do it alone because the resistance is alive and well. Yeah.
Well, and I think I mentioned before, when you and I talked, that it excites me so much to see people writing books like the one that you just wrote, and to see things that are questioning the lockstep that we've been in for, the last 20 or 30 years at least. I was talking with Chris Carr, who is a very much a plant-based person. We don't eat the same way, but we think the same way. Chris is all about like, I want to start a revolution, man. I want to help people do this.
Yeah.
I want to help people to come back from a cancer diagnosis, which is really hers. One of her main areas of focus is how do you live well and live better once you've had a cancer diagnosis? How do you learn how to do the disease thing differently? Because like once we have a diagnosis too, it's like, oh my God, you just give up. It's horrible. You just put yourself into the hands of the medical system and surprise when that doesn't work. So there's this amazing and growing body of literature from, anti-cancer, Dr. Sarvan Schreiber's piece. I think Dr. Oz is a revolutionary, even though many people who are, I think, super progressive say, well, he doesn't go far enough. But this guy's on national television talking about things like functional medicine. He sends his family to functional medicine doctors. He understands that nutrition is important. We'll talk about that. Again, I don't agree with him on everything, but I think he's part of a growing and very exciting movement. A lot of the books that have been written about cholesterol myths, the low-fat myths, people who are coming with lots of different ways, none of which agree with the past 20 years of crappy advice we've gotten.
Yeah.
And I consider them all to be different parts of a sort of a revolution that's marching forward.
Yep.
And I do think it's like, it's happening. We're in the middle of it right now, and I'm so happy to be a part of it. But I'm so relieved not to be doing it alone. I think for a long time I just felt like a voice in the wilderness, and I don't feel that way anymore.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Well, no, it is an exciting time, and you take it even further with points 5 and 6. I'm going to combine them here because I think there's a wonderful synergy between them, and that's number 5 is being healthy is a revolutionary act, which we've hit on. But then part of that revolution is to free your mind here with point 6 and to realize that this is not, as you say, this is not about six-pack abs and skinny jeans. It's about a revolution. Tell us about that.
Yeah, well, this is the place too where the media has just taken ownership of a whole meme, right? There's this whole thing of six-pack abs. It's become a running joke now that the cover of every Men's Health has like, your best body ever and how to get six-pack abs, and every women's magazine is like, drop 3 sizes, get a bikini body in 4 days, thin thighs. It's like these repeating, echoing imperatives that tell you what you should look like, and that's the payoff for being healthy. Again, it's like a place where we've bought into this idea that that's the symbol of health and fitness, and it's not. It's just not. Now, I will say, I think that being sexy and having a sexy, beautiful body is a lovely motivation. I don't think there's anybody that doesn't necessarily want to look and feel like look their best. Yeah. But it's not science. Again, all of the behavioral research shows us that connecting to extrinsic, outside motivators of how other people see you, how you appear to other people, they aren't really good lasting motivations. And that what they do, unfortunately, a lot of the focus on bikini bodies and six-pack abs, they just mess with your mind. Like, it's like if you aren't already looking like that, then you don't feel like you're worthy of self-care. That's what I got into as a young woman, was like, oh, I'm supposed to look like that? Oh, oh my God, if I don't look like that, then I'm not sexy and healthy and fit. And then I'm starting to hate myself more and doing the kinds of things you do when you hate yourself more. Eating at yourself rather than feeding and nourishing yourself, for example. So I think it's like, if the mass media messages about what you should look like are messing with you, tune them out. Like, go other places. That's why I always liked reading books and reading science. In some ways, it was a refuge for me from the conventional health and fitness magazine set. And increasingly now, it's social media. It's web-based media. It's the same thing. Like 6 celebrity bikini bodies that you are going to want to have. It's like, I just don't even look at that stuff anymore. I don't want to be sold on that line of goods. So I think it's become a kind of a fantasy symbol of health and fitness, but that's really not what it's all about.
Absolutely. And it also is, It reminds me of the calorie myth in the sense that it tries to lowest common denominator everyone. Like it says, for example, this is the one goal that everyone should strive for, and that goal is ridiculous for some. A silly example, and I hate to use sports analogies because not everyone can associate with them, but I'll try to break this one down as much as I can. And that's I was an ex-football player, so I played football, and most folks know, even if you're not super familiar with football, that they're the enormous people on the line. They're called linemen. Those are the big, like 300-pound people. And then you have, for example, wide receivers. Those are the people that are usually taller and thinner. Now, for anyone who's played football, you know that during conditioning, everyone does the same exercise and everyone eats the same meals. Like the team exercises and eats together. But the linemen will never look like the wide receivers. And the wide receivers will never look like the linemen, even though they're both eating and exercising in the same way, because we're not all the same. And having that one, like everyone needs to be a wide receiver. Like we understand that that would be ridiculous on the football field, but we don't take the same logic and apply it to everyday life.
No, and that comparing your body to someone else's body. When I wrote the 101 Revolutionary Ways to Be Healthy, I worked in a piece that was like, give up on body envy, like release body envy, move beyond the compare the bodies game, because I think it's really deadly. And it's for men and women, you're right, because you're never, your body, your bone structure, all of these different things, your metabolism to some extent, your just natural composition. But I think it's also really important to remember that the bodies that were shown on the covers of health and fitness magazines or celebrities who are movie stars, they represent a sort of percentage of a percentage. It's like 0.005% of the population is born with bodies that are naturally inclined to looking that way. They're kind of freaks of nature.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely.
But I also think it's very interesting to observe people who have bodies that are different than that conventional ideal, but who are so fit and so healthy and so confident in their bodies. They're like outrageously more sexy and appealing, and like you're just drawn to them. You can't take your eyes off of them.
Yeah.
Anybody, I think, can have that. Not everybody can have Giselle's body or whatever.
Yeah.
Not that everybody would want it, or your favorite quarterback's body. But you can have your body at its healthiest and best and most confident and self-loving and self-accepting and self-appreciating and happy in the world and showing up and giving your best gifts. And people like that, I'm sorry, like dead sexy, so sexy to be around. Yeah.
Absolutely. No, I love that. I love that you said that, not in a derogatory sense, but these people we sometimes see in the media are freaks, in the sense that having the genetics to look that way is a bit like having the genetics to be an excellent sprinter. Like we all realize that we cannot all be Olympic sprinters. It's not because we're not good enough. It's just because we have different gifts. For all of our listeners and viewers, there's many things you do that none of our other viewers and listeners could do. They're your unique gifts. But in this one arena, we seem to say that, no. Every single person in the world should be able to achieve this freakish accomplishment, which is only possible with not only a life dedicated to it, but also a certain very limited set of genetics.
Yeah, and by the way, while you're chasing that unachievable ideal, what aren't you doing?
Exactly.
How many young women do you see in high school who are so obsessed with counting calories and dieting and trying to fit into the next pair of skinny jeans and look like, whoever their current role model is, Miley Cyrus or something.
I hope they're not trying to look like...
No, they're twerking. But that becomes, we laugh about it, but honestly, Jonathan, like a huge amount of bandwidth is being taken up, not just by adolescent girls, but by grown-up men and women who have other business on this planet besides trying to fit into the next pair of jeans or look a certain way. Or it breaks my heart to think how much distraction there is and how it's debilitating people and disempowering them from pursuing healthier choices and happier choices, more empowering choices that would contribute not just to their own personal happiness, but to a more exalted place for all of us to be.
Such a critical point, Pilar. Health and fitness, tell me if this is, I'm hitting on the same point here. Health and fitness is a means to an end. We live in a culture where it's like you spend 15 hours in the week exercising. Okay, maybe like you could spend 15 hours a week doing much worse things. But what if you could spend 3 hours a week keeping your body in tip-top shape so that those other 12 hours could be spent helping the world?
Yeah. Yeah. Right. And think about it this way. Let me just toss this one out there for you. What if you figured out, in some of those hours, what really lights you up?
Yeah.
Like what actually makes you happy? Because I think that, and I can't remember, the quote is escaping me, but it's basically like the world needs more people who are lit up. That's what the world needs.
Yep.
And I think that when we focus on this lowest common denominator goal of looking a certain way, or it all becomes about the weight. If I was just 20 pounds lighter, and if I just had 25,000 more dollars, and it's like this attenuation, this putting off into some future fantasy, what it would take for you to be happy. And I think that whole mindset is just screwed up. That's what keeps that wish self keeps buying the next cover of Men's Health, the next cover of Women's Fitness, the next diet product, the next low-cal piece of food, the next, weight shaker, or whatever the, gimmicky fitnessy thing is. And I do believe it's less about the time, really, than it is about the reward. Like, are you doing stuff that's making you happy? Yeah, is it time efficient, but is it joy efficient more? So, it's like if you're spending all your time fighting between looking in the mirror to see if your butt looks okay and, doing compulsive workouts to try to improve the way your butt looks, you're probably not chasing a bigger dream. And that bigger dream is the thing that really deserves more space in your life.
And now I can see why you named your magazine what you did. You're not experiencing life.
Yeah.
And that's just brilliant. So that makes a lot of sense. Well, folks, I'm gonna make you go visit Pilar on the web to get tips 7, 8, and 9, because they are wonderful. But I want to make sure that we have enough time for number 10, because I love number 10, because it closes with hope, which is always great, and some solutions. Number 10 is that solutions in the mirror may be closer than they appear. So Pilar, we've covered a bunch of challenges.
Yeah.
We've also covered a lot of hope, because now we know that a different approach, an actually different approach, not just a different way to eat less and exercise more, and a more fun way to count calories, we're actually going to take a different approach. We're going to get a different result. Why are solutions closer than they may appear?
Well, the idea is that it really starts with you, that we can, in fact, would you mind if I just read this, Jonathan?
Oh, yeah, go ahead. No.
Okay. So number 10, solutions in the mirror. The scope and scale of our national health crisis is so massive that it may seem beyond all hope, but it is not. In fact, each of us has an important role to play in solving these problems for ourselves and for each other. Every time one of us starts taking the steps necessary to build and protect our health, we rescind our support of the nasty systems that are breaking millions of us down. And if enough of us start treating our own bodies well, we will create new norms of vitality and well-being. If we band together to demand and embrace healthier options in our grocery stores, cafeterias, homes, workplaces, schools, healthcare centers, neighborhoods, we can reverse the trends that have been depleting our life force for decades. Most of the trends and public policies responsible for our country's ill health have occurred over the past 40 years, in large part by design. And they can be turned around in a fraction of that time by a swell of grassroots insistence. So, if you can make that happen, do. Connect with others who share your healthy convictions. Then go boldly forth and start thriving. One conscious thought, one empowering choice, one revolutionary act at a time.
Ooh, I got chills. I love it. That is so wonderful. That is so well, Pilar. I mean, that just speaks volumes. So rather than taking trying to top that, I'm gonna wave my white flag and say you just got that. That is beautiful. And Pilar, where can folks go to learn more about this, to learn more about you, to reread for themselves that amazing passage you just shared with us? Give us the 411.
Sure, revolutionaryact.com. And there they can find the manifesto, also a feature article that I wrote that contains a lot of interesting statistics that kind of launched the manifesto. The manifesto was originally just part of that article. It's called Being Healthy is a Revolutionary Act, and it's like wisdom for thriving in a mixed up world. But it's available at revolutionaryact.com, as is a really cool interactive web feature called 101 Revolutionary Ways to Be Healthy. It's kind of a mouse rollover deal, and that's a mobile app too that people can get for their iPhone or Android or Kindle or just about any device through the iTunes store, wherever you get your apps. So I recommend that. And then experiencelife.com is the site for the magazine, which is this, in case anybody's not seen that. It's a long issue, but and that's full. They link together. Revolutionaryact.com is powered by Experience Life, and so you'll find a lot of cool content there as well.
The coolest content of all, Pilar, I feel, is the woman on the other end of the camera here, and that is yourself. So where can we learn more about you as an individual? Because certainly you inspire me, and I'm sure you inspire our viewers. Where can we learn more about you and what you're up to next?
Thank you. Well, I'm building my own website for the very first time in my history. I've always been the woman behind the magazine, but find me I've got like a fan page on Facebook that Pilar, I think Gerasimo, and on Twitter I'm P Gerasimo, which is P, excuse me, P-G-E-R-A-S-I-M-O. And I love connecting with people through social media. And I should have a website up in the next month or so. And I'll let people know more about what I'm up to through those channels.
I love it. Well, Pilar Gerasimo, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for being a catalyst in this literally life-saving revolution. And I cannot wait for our listeners to learn more about you and to join the cause.
Thanks so much, Jonathan. And thanks for all you do, too. It's awesome.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, viewers, I hope you enjoyed this amazing and empowering conversation as much as I did. And please remember, this week and every week after, eat smarter, exercise smarter, and live better. We'll chat with you soon.